Hi again. Thanks for stopping by to watch our latest episode on our motivational pulpit on YouTube. The train hummed to life as it pulled away from King's Cross Station, metal and motion melting into a rhythm that always felt like both departure and discovery. The morning light slanted through the window, fractured by glass and movement, painting golden lines on tired faces and newspaper pages. I sat by the window, headphones in, but no music playing, just the illusion of solitude in a crowded carriage. Across from me, a young woman in a gray coat scrolled through her phone, her thumb flicking endlessly through lives that weren't hers. Beside her, a man in a suit mouthed silent arguments, rehearsing what must be a tough conversation ahead. 2 seats down, a student slept against a backpack that looked heavier than his dreams. Everyone, it seemed, was plugged in, somewhere else, anywhere but here. I stared at my reflection in the window, half ghosted by the city blurring past. For a moment, I caught my own eyes and thought, we're all carrying light, but most of us don't even know it. It struck me how much of the world's brightness gets lost in distraction, how many ideas never surface because someone chose to scroll instead of think, how many voices stayed silent because comparison drowned their courage. The train was full, yet every soul was in its own little orbit of noise. And I thought, focus is the quiet rebellion of our time. Outside, the cityscape gave way to stretches of suburban calm. I pulled out my notebook, its pages already scarred with half-written thoughts. In a world full of distractions, your focus is your power, I wrote slowly. You carry a light the world needs. Stay focused, and shine bright. The woman across from me looked up for the first time, maybe sensing my gaze, or maybe the silence between us had shifted. Her eyes were weary, but kind. She smiled faintly, almost apologetically, and put her phone away. For a few minutes, she just looked out the window too. And in that tiny, shared stillness, something shifted. Not just in her, but in me. In that moment, I realized that light isn't about doing something grand. Sometimes it's about holding your own attention in a world that's begging to steal it. The train rattled on, a moving metaphor for time itself. People got off, others climbed aboard. But I stayed still, anchored in that quiet conviction that I had something worth guarding, my focus, my purpose, my light. When the train reached my stop, I stood, slipped the notebook into my bag, and whispered the line to myself once more, like a prayer, stay focused. Shine bright. The world outside was loud, but inside, I was steady. And that, I realized, was power. The train doors slid shut with their familiar sigh, and I sank into my usual seat, the same one I'd claimed for nearly 5 years. Same line. Same journey. Same rhythm of steel and silence. But today, felt different. Maybe it was the weight of the unopened letters on my kitchen counter, mortgage reminders, council tax, Thames water, British gas. Maybe it was the quiet hum of worry that had followed me out of bed and into this carriage. As the train snaked its way from West Ruislip to Epping, my thoughts kept drifting, bills, direct debits, the next paycheck, the rising cost of everything. The metal-on-metal groan of the train cut through my thoughts, but only for a moment. They always came back. I looked around. Dozens of faces, each lost in their own quiet storm. A mother staring blankly at her reflection in the window, a builder dozing off between night shifts, a student counting coins on her phone app, a man in a suit clutching a paper cup like it held the last bit of warmth left in his life. And it struck me, we're all on the same train, not just this one, but the one called survival. Millions of us, hustling through the city's veins, chasing deadlines, dodging overdrafts, stretching paychecks, praying that the next month won't hit harder than the last. We call it the grind. But sometimes, it feels more like the grind calls us. The pressure to keep it all together. To provide. To stay afloat. To smile, even when the math doesn't math. And yet, as I watched the city blur past, a quiet truth rose up in me. A reminder from Proverbs 16 verse 3, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. Maybe we hustle so hard because we've forgotten who truly carries the weight. Maybe the goal isn't to control the outcome, but to surrender the journey. I exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of the train become a heartbeat again. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that faith isn't the absence of work. It's the presence of trust. Trust that the same God who provides for the sparrow can cover the mortgage. Trust that peace isn't found in the paycheck, but in the provider. Trust that when I do my part and hand him the rest, things start to align, not always instantly, but always intentionally. The train pulled into the next station. People got off, new ones got on. Life kept moving. I looked out the window one last time and whispered quietly to myself, Lord, I commit it all, the bills, the pressure, the plans, into your hands. And for the first time in a long while, the journey didn't feel like a race. It felt like a reminder. Because even in the chaos of London life, even in the grind and the cost and the noise, peace travels with you when you stop trying to drive the train yourself. The day faded into its familiar blur. Emails, calls, deadlines, 1,000 things demanding attention, but none giving peace. By the time I boarded the Central line for the long ride home, the city was already glowing with that weary kind of light, the one that sits somewhere between ambition and exhaustion. I found my usual seat, the same spot where I'd started the morning, and let out a deep sigh that felt older than the day itself. The train doors closed with their usual thud, and the familiar hum of the underground filled the space. West Ruislip to Epping. London's longest underground line. And tonight, it felt like a mirror of life itself, long, winding, sometimes dimly lit, but always moving forward. I watched as faces changed at every stop, workers, dreamers, parents, hustlers, people trying to hold it all together. Each one, a story in motion. My mind, as usual, started drifting again. Bills. The mortgage. The reminder letters from the council. Was it Thames Water this time? Or British Gas? It didn't matter, they all carried the same weight. The metal groan of the train interrupted my thoughts every few minutes, but never long enough to quiet them. And then, as we pulled into Hanger Lane, something small but unexpected happened. The passenger beside me, an older man with tired eyes and a kind smile, stood up, straightened his coat, and got off. As he did, a leaflet fluttered down from his seat onto the floor. It caught my eye. I picked it up absent-mindedly, expecting it to be a takeout flyer or an advert. But it wasn't. It read, "Don't let problems steal your peace. What matters most is how you live, not what you worry about." I stared at it for a moment, the words sinking deeper than I expected. Because right there, between West London's tunnels and tomorrow's to-do lists, I realized something: peace isn't found when the problems disappear. It's found when you choose to live above the worry. We all carry something heavy on this train: bills, expectations, disappointments, doubts. But maybe the journey isn't about escaping the weight. Maybe it's about discovering that peace was never supposed to come from perfect circumstances, but from a trusting heart. Proverbs 16 verse 3 echoed quietly in my spirit again: "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." Maybe that was the message I needed. That even in the underground, even when life feels dim and crowded, there are still divine reminders left behind by strangers. Little whispers from heaven saying, "Breathe, trust, I've got you." As the train sped deeper into the tunnels, I folded the leaflet carefully and slipped it into my pocket. A small piece of paper, but a great weight lifted. The train rattled on, pulling away from Hanger Lane. I was still holding the leaflet the man had left behind, the one that read, "Don't let problems steal your peace. What matters most is how you live, not what you worry about." I folded it gently, as if it were something sacred, and slipped it into my pocket. Outside, the sky had begun to fade into a dusky amber, the kind of London evening that looked tired and beautiful all at once. Then the familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. "The next stop is North Acton," the tannoy announced, "where this train will be slightly delayed." A soft collective sigh spread through the carriage, that familiar mixture of impatience and resignation every London commuter knows too well. I glanced at my wristwatch. 6:30 p.m. Thank you for listening. Please like, share and subscribe, if you want more of this motivational post. We would really appreciate if you could drop a comment to let us know what city or country you're watching from. God bless you. Another long day, another late train. I leaned back in my seat and reached for a newspaper that had been left behind. Something, anything, to fill the silence. The job vacancies section caught my eye. There it was, an advert for a new role. Big salary. Generous benefits. Career growth, it promised. It all looked so juicy. But as I read, a quiet thought slipped into my mind, one that cut through the noise like a whisper in a tunnel. If you're already stressed within your current job and your current salary, will making more money really solve that stress? Or will it just add more? I stared at the words, then at my reflection in the darkened train window. So often, we rush to fix what feels wrong without asking whether we're running toward peace, or just another version of pressure. Maybe it's not always about making a move, but making the right move. Sometimes, we're so desperate to get out of our current situation that we forget to ask what we're truly stepping into. And in that moment, a quiet conviction settled in. Not every opportunity is a blessing, some are distractions dressed in good packaging. It's why prayer matters. It's why wisdom matters. Before you leap, you pause. Before you chase the next big thing, you ask, is this God's door, or just my desperation knocking? Then the tannoy crackled back to life. Apologies for the delay. The train is about to depart. The next station is White City. The wheels clanked, the carriage swayed, and slowly we began to move again. The rhythm of the train matched the rhythm of my breathing, steady, unhurried. And I thought to myself, maybe that's what peace really looks like, not the absence of problems, but the patience to wait through delays, the wisdom to discern the right doors, and the faith to trust that every stop, every pause, every detour still leads somewhere purposeful. As the lights flickered and the tunnels blurred by, I looked down at my reflection once more. The same journey I'd taken for nearly 5 years suddenly felt different. Because this time, I wasn't just counting stations. I was counting lessons. The train began to move again, slow at first, then faster, the familiar rhythm of motion returning like a heartbeat. I leaned back, letting the vibration of the tracks hum beneath my thoughts. To distract myself, I reached for my phone. Notifications. Emails. Reminders. The digital noise that fills the quiet. I scrolled absent-mindedly, through unread emails, through the memory of earlier meetings, through the image of the coffee shop across the road where I'd had lunch with friends. Just the ordinary rhythm of another London workday, the small, forgettable details that somehow make up so much of our lives. Then something caught my eye. An email I'd opened earlier but never truly read. Cece. Her name blinked back at me from the subject line. Cece, one of those rare colleagues who saw people, not just roles. She always had a kind word to offer, a bright smile, and the kind of encouragement that stayed with you long after she'd walked away. I opened the email properly this time. You've come a long way. You deserve a seat at the table, and if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I smiled involuntarily. That was so Cece. Bold. Warm. Unapologetically confident. I immediately typed a reply, thanking her for her message. Because she was right, I had come a long way. Just last week, I'd completed the final stage of the selection process for a senior leadership role, day 1, day 2, and the final interview. I could still feel the weight of hope sitting quietly beside me, like another passenger on this train. I was positive about my chances, but even if it didn't go as planned, I reminded myself that faith doesn't stop at outcomes, it continues in character. Cece's words lingered in my mind as the train glided through the tunnel toward White City. Her encouragement wasn't just about ambition, it was about identity. She often said to me, your style matters, because style isn't only what you wear, it's what you project. And as I stared at my reflection in the window again, tired eyes, loose tie, weary but still standing, I realized what she meant. Style isn't about the label on your clothes or the size of your paycheck. It's about what leaks out of your soul, how you carry yourself when life feels heavy, how you still choose grace when you could choose bitterness, how you keep showing up even when no one's clapping. Style is the only thing you can't buy. It's not in a shopping bag, a brand, or a price tag. It's something that reflects from the inside out, an emotion, a quiet confidence, a light that refuses to dim. As the train pulled into White City, I caught sight of my faint reflection again, but this time, I didn't just see a tired commuter. I saw someone who had survived seasons, carried responsibility, shown up with integrity, and was still daring to dream. Maybe that's what style really is, not fashion, but faith. Not perfection, but presence. The tannoy chimed softly, the next stop is Shepherd's Bush. I smiled, slid my phone back into my pocket, and leaned into the motion of the train once more. Because somewhere between Hanger Lane and White City, between delays and emails, worries and whispers, I'd found something worth keeping, peace in the waiting. Confidence in the journey, and grace enough to keep shining, even underground. The next stop is Holland Park, the tannoy echoed. Then came a sudden burst of noise, laughter, shouts, and the restless energy of a group of teenagers piling into the carriage, probably on their way to football practice. For a moment, the peace I'd found was tested. But then I smiled. Chaos can't shake you if you choose not to react. Stay calm. Because in a world that keeps getting louder, a calm mind remains your strongest weapon. To be continued. Thank you for watching and listening. Please like, share and subscribe to keep our YouTube channel going. Drop me a message and let me know, what city, what country are you watching from?